the recording, and we'll do this. And welcome to, is it recording this? What's it recording? Oh, it's recording that. Welcome to, oh, Brian wanted to come twice. How about that?
Yeah. Tried coming in through my browser, see if that would make things a little bit easier, but unfortunately it didn't work the way I thought, so I'm coming back. I'm using the Zoom program instead.
Oh, okay.
So,
okay. So I think this is meeting 15 that we're having, and one of the things that we were going to talk about today was John's model, and then I wanted to talk about the model portion of what we have developed. I have some thoughts about how it is that it ended up the way it did. Okay, and we can talk about any other items that the two of you would like to talk about. So, do you want to tell us about your model, John?
Yes. So I've been doing a bunch of research from, say, the Harvard Business Review about added value and among other places. Because in my farm experience background, farmers are price takers. They maybe add a little value by feeding their grain crop to some animals and selling it that way, but still there's a tendency to take the price that is available when your crop is available. And what I observed happening is that when you ship it to a central processor, you take it to your local grain elevator, and they ship it off to someplace for milling. The skills that want to be rewarded locally go where value is added. So local skills tend to stabilize or decline. Incomes decline. And a prime current example for me is the whole eastern plains of Colorado. When I started drilling into my economic innovation group data, oh my goodness, all the distressed and at-risk counties, the eastern counties are distressed and at risk. Employment declines and population declines. There are counties in eastern Colorado where there just aren't doctors because there aren't enough people to serve. And the kinds of businesses, there are towns that don't have a grocery store or maybe only have one, and they charge as a result exorbitant prices. So therefore you have a county that is stuck in decline. What I've heard and read a lot recently is that what we're seeing in rural areas is also true of urban distressed zip codes. Well, when nobody in the community owns anything except the wage that they bring home at the end of the day, well, that's an occasion for income inequality. What I'm envisioning is this other path over here. I'll hover right here for a second. We enable local value added. And in some of the, when Klaus talks about regenerative agriculture, when that change happens, that would be an ideal time to say, and oh, by the way, let's process locally, because the extra skills that we're going to need to do regenerative agriculture, we need to reward those skills by processing locally and keeping value in the community. So we have maybe the current crop, we process it locally, prices stabilize. Well, I sure could have used a better font, right? But as we introduce new crops, we have favorable pricing to the producer, and we may need new technology. The farmer doing that new thing doesn't need a $300,000 John Deere tractor. Maybe he can adapt a $50,000 Kubota. Anyway, we've enabled growth, employment stabilizes, we're adding new skills. Incomes rise, population increases, those restaurants, grocery stores, whatever, they start to flourish. And now we have a county that instead of being in decline, it's the kind of place that we call flyover country, and justifiably so. As I have driven I-80 and then I-76 from the northeast corner of Colorado into the Front Range, there's just miles and miles of, there's nothing there. Because
they're not even growing anything on the land. It's just,
well,
there's no livestock on it. It's just empty.
well,
It's just left.
sometimes there's livestock on it, but the carrying capacity, instead of like back in Illinois, you might have 5 cows per acre. On the eastern plains of Colorado, you have 2 cows per 10 acres.
Oh, okay.
Now, as you get closer to the mountains and you have some irrigation, then yes, there you see center pivot irrigation and various things, and you start to see some green because there's water. But it would be chancy in some places towards the Kansas border to raise a crop that needs water. So that's the thought.
All right. Do you want to take a hack at this, Brian?
Well, it's looking good. It's not yet a causal loop diagram map because we don't have any feedback loops anywhere. And I think that there are going to be feedback loops in this thing at certain places, which are either going to be stabilizing things or stagnating things. But a lot of the issues that John's brought up are the issues that, I saw in my maps too when I dealt with similar things. Commodification of the market for one. But it looks really interesting. I'm just, okay, so you got an O3R skills decline, which means it's a reinforcing loop. So it's got to be feeding back somewhere, or it's got to go somewhere. So there's a loop. So it is a reinforcing loop. Right now it's not. I don't know. Maybe you had an idea about where you wanted to put that. That's the only R I can see right now.
I did this. I finished this at 12:30 last night.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I got an email from him shortly after that.
And you're awake to read it too, huh?
Yeah.
But okay, you've got it so I can't see anything else, John. Yeah, great. So income declines. But it's also showing some of the same issues that I showed in income decline, population decline, that that because of what's happening on the top of the map, which is all the industrial farming, going on, it is going to stagnate what we can do on the bottom part of the map, because these two things have to compete in the same market. That's the problem. You got 10B, new crop favors pricing. Why did you make that a balancing loop? I mean, you don't have it as a balancing loop right now because there's no loop, but why did you think it was going to be balancing instead of reinforcing?
Right here?
Yeah. Like
oh, I don't know. Maybe that's a misnomer so far.
okay. I can see 9B, current crop prices stabilizing. I mean, I think that's usually what happens in the economy. The supply and demand make the prices stabilize at some point. And maybe there would be balancing for favorable pricing, but I would have thought there'd be, that loop would be reinforcing, and then 9 would be stabilizing, and they would work together to come up with a price, but I'm only guessing right now. And 8B, enable local added value. I'd have to think that was going to be reinforcing, because you're not going to have infinite added value, but you are going to have, you're going to have growing or virtuous added value, I would assume. But I'm only starting off right now.
It would take a coalition of catalysts to enable local value added.
Yes.
Because there's so much status quo going on there.
Yes.
Here in 9B, some farmers are savvy enough that they're doing hedging contracts.
Right.
Things like that.
Yeah, I can see that. Okay. One of the things I've got when I've been doing my work with the new community paradigms is this idea of entrenched systems. I think that we have a lot of systems that are, even though they're detrimental, they're configured in such a way that it's very hard to change the status quo. The mental models are so solidified that we have a hard time thinking of ways of getting around them. And I think a lot of times people don't realize how entrenched the systems are, and they think, well, we just have to have a protest and things will change, and that's not going to happen. So I find that interesting. What do you think, Jane?
I think there might be a point of confusion about elements and loops, because I just posted a link in the chat window. If you want to go ahead and open that.
Yeah. Oh, the template. Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay.
Well, I wanted John to open it so it showed up on his screen.
Yeah.
Okay. Chat. New share.
Should be just to the right of it. To the right of share.
There we go. Yeah. Okay.
So loops are defined based upon a set of connections. So that it's not the elements that are loops, it's a set of connections defines a loop. So that because principal influences interest to increase, which influences principal to increase, they're all going in the same direction, so that defines a reinforcing loop. Whereas the loop where there are an odd number of things which are opposite, 1, 3, 5, 7, whatever, you walk the loop and find out whether or not the number of opposites is odd. And when it is, then it's a balancing loop. So that you have to actually create something that forms a loop, and then you go ahead and create a label, which is another thing you use the plus sign down the bottom for. You tell it you want to create a loop, and then you tell it which elements are part of the loop. So if you go back to your model.
Okay.
We're gonna define a loop that's not actually a loop, just to go through the motion. So if you click the plus sign, add loop, call it test loop or something. Okay, now click the connections that are part of that loop, one after the other. The connections, not the elements. Okay. Now you can go ahead and then hit enter.
Going a little overboard, I suppose.
Well, because it's not actually a loop, but if you go ahead and now hit enter, okay, now you have test loop that shows up in the middle of, no, in the middle of your map.
Oh, right there.
And you can move that around. If you hover over it, it focuses the elements and the connections that are part of it. So, all right, so if you hover over that, all of the stuff on the bottom goes away because you defined all of these pieces to be part of that loop.
Okay.
Okay.
You can focus on it too.
Right. You could just click on it and hit focus over on the right.
Over here. The little sight sign, that one, yes, there you go.
Right. So you've now focused that loop definition. Now, if you decide that you wanted something else as part of this or something not part of it, if you go ahead and hit the three dots on the left, go ahead and close this again. Hit the three dots and close it. They're hard to see. You can also do it with the tab key.
Okay.
Hit the tab key. Okay. All right. Now click on test loop. No, over in the middle of the map. There we go. Just all right. So it's selected. Now there's a pencil in the middle of the screen toward the bottom. Edit connection. Okay. You can take things out of the definition, or you can add things to the definition. And then click
that's
save.
so cool.
Huh?
I didn't know that. That's cool. I mean, I can't redo the whole thing. I just started.
Oh, no.
A lot faster.
Okay.
A new one and then erase the old one.
No. Okay. Good thing we did this then.
Yes.
So now with the focus like this, I can isolate on this part of the map and deal with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you should click save now. All right. Now click on test loop again. Hit and go over to focus. So, notice that line doesn't show up now because it's not part of test loop. If you click test loop and hit focus, oh, that'll clear focus. All right. Hit test loop and focus again. Just click on it and then
hit the focus one more time.
Right there.
There you go.
Notice that connection is not there now.
Right.
Because it's not part of that loop definition. In other words, within the context of Kumu, loop is sort of a figurative definition because it doesn't actually, what you call a loop doesn't have to be a loop. No. It's just a set of connections. It was meant to define loops. Hi, Robert.
Hi. Sorry I'm late.
That's okay.
Yeah. I missed the last one.
That's all right. Other people are missing this one. Glad you're here.
Thank you.
So you could define a single connection as a loop. There are things that you can do with labeled sets of connections that are quite meaningful. And when you explain them to people, you just wouldn't call them loops call them groups, loop groups, fruit loops.
That's nice.
Okay. The other thing, if you go ahead and clear the focus and bring all of the pieces back, I would think as I look at this, there are all of the things that you say are influenced by ship to central processor. I think there's some longer chains of influence here, so that ship to central processor causes employment to decline, which causes population to decline, which causes county to be stuck in decline. As opposed to employment declines to directly influence county. I think it influences population, but that's a personal opinion. Right? And the incomes decline, which is responsible for ancillary businesses to decline because people aren't buying stuff. Okay. Now you can move these connections around. So why are we still focused here?
As you said.
Oh, okay. If you go to the end of, let's see.
Here?
No, if you go to the end of the connection that goes from income decline to county stuck in decline, go to the end, now the other end, where the pointer is.
Okay.
If you can click on the pointer, you can move it.
And put it someplace else.
And population declines. Pull it down.
Down to there.
Right here?
Yeah. See? So rather than having to redraw them, you can move them around.
And you can change direction too.
Yes. Hit the tab key. Select the connection. You got to get one selected.
Right again.
Okay, there. Now you can change the direction, or you can make them dual, or just reverse it. Okay.
Does it work?
Okay.
Okay, I'm not sure it worked.
Huh? So in terms of based upon my limited awareness of how you're thinking about this, I wouldn't want to suggest that you ought to change them. I would want to suggest that you go back and think about, are there some more of these where A influences B influences C influences D, as opposed to only having 3 stages here.
Right.
It's not subtle enough yet.
And the thing is, the part that people get really hung up on, hit the tab key again so we can look at the rest of the model. The people get hung up on is they say, I mean, they're concerned about it not being right. It will never be right, okay? It will be a personal perspective on a set of relationships. And I have lost track of the number of times I've gone back and looked at models that I worked on endlessly. And a year later, I've gone back to it and said, what the hell was I thinking when I did this? It's wrong, okay? Mm-hmm. And nobody caught it. I wish they had have, but I had to fix it because it just didn't make sense anymore.
Yeah.
The thing is, it's an endless sequence of trial and learning. The more that you work with it, the more your understanding about it evolves, and your opinion evolves. So what I tell people about Kumu is, it's actually about as fluid as a pencil and piece of paper, but it has a better eraser. Okay, use it, and don't worry about, get all hung up about, is this correct? Just do it, look at it, move things around, move them around, and then it will evolve. Donella Meadows described it as a dance between you and the model. You tell it what you think, and as you look at it, it tells you some more about what you think, and it just goes back and forth. And the thing with simulation models is you develop them and you run them, and what it more often than not does, it tells you that either your assumptions are wrong or your model is wrong, because reality is not that absurd, because that's what it tells you.
Yeah.
Well, these are variables that are in my spreadsheet. So I could, I think, look at a particular county and see all the variables here that apply to that county.
Okay.
So there could be a rule of thumb, like for 3 drought years in a row, expect to stay stuck if you didn't do some powerful change initiative. And as far as Donella Meadows and the dance, I'm feeling a little bit like the 7th grader that went to his first dance. It's fairly awkward right now, but
Well,
that's okay.
Though it only gets better if you do some more dancing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, you should have been here with me when I created the first half a dozen videos. Oh my God. The pain factor was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And the videos still aren't that good. It's just I'm comfortable doing them.
Yeah.
Can these arrows can the line have an arrow going the other way too?
Yes, we just changed this one.
But I mean, like for, I don't know, growth options open and employment stabilizes, the arrow goes to employment stabilizes. Can the arrow go from employment stabilizes to growth options?
That would be a loop. If you had both, it'd be a loop. One going one way, one going the other. That's a loop.
That's
Yeah,
all right.
typically when we do relationship diagrams, we don't use double directed arrows. We use
Well, I think that's good
separate arrows.
Yeah, 2 separate arrows.
well, that's good, or in a sense, then that we're talking that time is flowing forward. We can't reverse the process. So
Right.
Right.
No, I mean, the elements on the map seem sensible. I think there are probably more of the relationships that you need to connect differently, and you need to figure out how to. I mean, there are some loops here someplace.
Right.
I mean, I don't know exactly where they are at the moment, but they're there.
So I'm going to be a little bit explicit here. So something that Gene said this a little bit ago, and that is there's a difference between loops and elements. So this O3R, that's not a loop, that's an element. So what you're going to do is you're going to make a loop out of something, and you maybe call it O3R, and maybe skills decline, but skills decline may be an element within that loop. So that's what you got to figure out, what the loops are. So test loop would be numbered either a reinforcing loop or a balancing loop, and 1 through whatever number it happened to be. So that's what you're going to do with the rest of this stuff.
And if you and the template that I pointed you to,
Yes.
there's a, if you go back to the template, there's attempt to create. I guess I must have done this. I have overwritten my own template a couple of times. There is a video that goes along with this, and I build these 2 structures step by step and explain what I'm doing and why the labels are what they are.
Okay.
Okay.
I need to make liberal use of that. Okay.
I wonder who did that. Okay. Hi there. We're on the phone. The boss is home. So what is it that you're attempting to decipher, John?
I'm going to attempt. So I have that presentation with people from Startup Colorado and the Office of Economic Development next week.
Oh, you're presenting to them?
Yes.
Oh, so you would probably like to get this done by then?
Yes. And
One real quick thing though, it doesn't have to be a causal loop diagram when you
No, it
present.
doesn't.
No, you can do just a relational map showing how all these things fit together. And you know, I mean, you don't need the O3 Rs and OBs and everything like that, but this may be okay for what you're looking for. If you just can explain it, you know, in a way that people will understand it.
And we can show you how to unfold it as a presentation in the order that you want to do it rather rapidly. Once you have a sense of what you really want to have in the presentation. And to Brian's point, because they're not loops, I would take the R and B prefixes off of the elements. I don't have a problem with the labels of the elements themselves. It's just the prefix that's alluding to a loop that isn't a loop. So you know, from at this point, I would think that you would want to say, all right, from the current agricultural products, the way that I understand things happening in our environment, this happens and that influences this and this and this and this, and we end up in this situation. The alternative that's a possibility is to take the other path to go this way, which enables this, 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 and this, and we get to here. Okay, so you explain the top. I'm pointing to this map as though it's my map and you see my mouse move, but it doesn't. This is John's map. So you unfold the top part, and then you talk about the alternative, and you unfold the bottom part.
right. First the bad news, then the good possibilities.
Right. So there doesn't actually have to be any loops. Just show the set of influences.
The only caveat is that if you did have loops, those would show the constraining factors on the system you're trying to implement, or the stagnating factors on the elements that you're trying to get rid of. It would probably be a clear sign of reality. But that's just my systems thinking bias.
Really?
Well, we need all the clear signs of reality we can lay our hands on. So I'll heed that and go from there.
So in a couple of days, let me know, and we'll get together, and I'll explain how to turn this into a presentation in relatively short order.
Yeah, John, you had some other maps too, which weren't causal loop diagrams, but were still interesting. And they were like community maps, or how do we want to, you know, the Kumo not only does causal loop diagrams, they also do diagrams where you can look at in-betweenness and, you know, community and all this other stuff, which I don't know anything about, and I don't know if Gene has any familiarity with it. Very little, yeah. All right. I mean, I'm always interested in it, but
I have seen some that other people did that were marvelous, and I have done a couple of them, though it's not something I have an enormous amount of experience with. But you know, just to simply use it to show the relationships between a large number of things. I did one with community development people, and people from different communities were working on different problems, employing different approaches, and we developed a relationship map that they could use to quickly find out who else might be experiencing the same kind of thing that they're doing, that they might talk to leverage their learning.
Right.
Yeah, something like this.
Yeah. Now, I'm completely lost with this myself, but it looks interesting.
Well,
Data.
I'm still groping with this one.
Well, that's a good start.
Groping? Oh, groping can go places, yes. But here are the Front Range. This is prosperity here. I mean, here's where I'm sitting right now, Larimer County. Notice it's prosperous and urban.
Okay.
And there ought to be other factors attached here. These are resort counties. So when you people come to Colorado to ski, you go to places like Gunnison, Route, where Steamboat Springs is, right? Those are also prosperous. This is I-70 right here. On the other hand, here are some tough times.
Okay.
Agricultural, at risk.
So you had Kumu do a clustering for you?
I just imported this from a spreadsheet.
Oh, okay.
And I literally threw the mud on the wall, and where it stopped sliding is what you see.
Okay.
Click on agricultural.
Okay.
Okay. Click on Rio Grande up at the right. Okay. All right. See, notice that the type on this is agricultural over on the left. It says
Right.
agricultural.
Right.
So in the spreadsheet, there are some things that defined some types of some of the elements. And,
Right.
Okay. And one thing that this map would benefit from tremendously, I think, probably is different colors for the counties and the types of the counties, so that you know when you look at this, distressed is a type or a character, agricultural is a type or a character, whereas Alamosa, Bent, Castilla are actual counties,
Yes.
but they have the same dots.
Yes. And what these names are sized on population. Well,
Okay.
So I've done a revision where I did I took the log, the base 2 log of the population, so that places like La Plata down by New Mexico could actually have a font size that competes with Denver County.
Okay. It was invisible, huh?
Oh my. And in
Okay.
practice, that's what the people in La Plata County probably feel like.
Okay.
I have another map.
But see that, as I said before, it's the same thing. You build this spreadsheet and you go ahead and you display the data and you look at it, and as you continue to look at it, you develop an understanding and you say, well, if I did this and this, it would be more understandable, it would make more sense, and oh well, we could change this and this, and then that's the way it goes. If you knew the answer before you started, you wouldn't do it.
Right.
Well, you don't need to do it.
I have another map that positions the county name geographically.
I like that. That was nice.
Now, what I need to do is decorate that with, for example, average annual rainfall, other location type data, what river basin they're in. Because in Colorado, that makes a difference. You know, there's things like water law. And so when you put I believe when I put this data explicitly in front of someone as to where the variables are located on the map, then that starts to have an impact on the viewer.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Something I'm a little concerned about is if I show this map in a governmental setting, somebody's going to look at it and say, yeah, here's where the votes are. Now, why is it again? I'm going to say that I care about this, but there's, you know, I'd like to be able to show population. And so when we talk about a proposed change, how many people are impacted by that? That could be more subtle than what I have skills for. But as we are saying, you know, this comes with time. So, anyway.
Yes, the most important thing is taking the first step.
Yes.
Which was not easy, was it?
Oh, no.
Does Brian remember his first step?
No, too long ago.
Too long ago, yeah.
Too many missteps between.
Okay. All right. Well, anything else at the moment, John?
No. That's you've given me lots of stuff I can go back to the drawing board with. So
Okay. All right. You want to bring up the model we've been working on?
Yes. Oh, no, I didn't mean to do that. Here we are. And
No, this is good right there. That's good.
okay.
So I have refused to show this to numerous people, and will continue to do that. I tell them to go look at Brian's presentation. I think that where we went wrong with this map, which is just a perspective, is that we were not very disciplined when we developed this. Whatever somebody brought up as an item, we sort of said, okay, and we wired it into the map. And I don't think we spent nearly enough time stopping to think about, does this really go here? And what's the real influence if it does go here? And I mean, there wasn't a lot of stuff over time that we actually rearranged. I remember that we did some stuff up here in the what's this? I can't read it. Can't remember what the topic was. Can you enlarge the map? You can do it with a little more. Oh yeah, okay, there. Up in the area of public awareness and understanding and the systems value system. I mean, we spent some time and rearranged this, but for the majority of the map, I don't think we spent a lot of time rehashing and rehashing the relationships. Not nearly the way that I do with my own maps. I mean, I'm merciless in terms of rethinking, overthinking, and probably the way that Brian does when he works on his presentations. So I think that this map could have been less of a headache if we had have been more disciplined about its development. Yeah,
I'm going to agree with you and disagree with you. Okay.
Awesome. I love it.
All right. I think you're right, but I think that it's hard to try to do that with this map because it has gone through so much. It's kind of been beaten up a bit. So what I basically did is take your map, and then the relevant factors map that I've been using is basically this map with a lot of the extraneous, what I saw as being extraneous stuff. And I have been going through that, wrestling with these concepts of systems and public awareness and so forth, but doing it separately because it's just too confusing here. And I also don't want to mess up what anybody else is doing. So, I mean, I see this as kind of like the sausage making factory. And then I'm the cook and I'm taking all the ingredients that we've made in here, taking them out of the back of the kitchen and then putting them on the plate. And that's just easier for me to work with.
Okay, is that on the drop down, your map on the drop down, or did you put it in another project?
No, it's in yours. It's in here.
Okay, which one was it? Go to introduction, John.
At the top.
Okay.
No, the introduction drop down.
Oh, here.
Uh-huh.
Okay, relevant factors. That's the main one. Okay. So this is almost the same thing that you have on your other one. Except it's I just moved it around a bit and kind of tried to tidying it up, plus made it so that you could go down this narrative box here and pick certain things.
So did you
go down the narrative box? There, see? So again, there you see.
Well, what does the focus option do?
Hit focus. Click focus. Click focus.
No, on the left.
The red one.
On the left.
This one.
Right.
I got to clear this one first and then click this one?
Yeah, click that. Right.
Okay.
Okay.
That I did that for people who have no idea what Kumu does. Okay.
Oh, okay.
That's. And then clear focus is what you gave me, which I thought was really cool. I like that. There. Clear the whole thing out.
So this was all of the loops.
Right.
And you figured out that there are loops 1 through 4 are part of farmland competition.
Right.
And 5 and 6 are production and profit.
Right.
Okay. So you took the absolute chaos and made some order out of it.
Right. Right.
And provided a crib sheet.
Right. But this isn't the only order that could be taken out of what we as a group created. I mean, somebody else may see some other kind of order in there. One of the things that always worries me working with groups, like with the Acumen, systems practice classes, is that once you create something like this, people sort of like just fixate on it and, don't see other possibilities, which oftentimes I think there may be.
No.
Oh, well, I sure like that focus idea, so that you can, to me, it's like you could tell the story like the scales of time, that you're click down on one, and then you can zoom out and out of how that what things stay connected and what dissolve as you zoom in and out.
Right, exactly. Plus, you also, if you go down to the bottom, you'll see go to O2. So you start with 1, then you can go to 2, 3, 4, and like you say, Robert, you can do it over time.
And since you're doing that over time, I mean, I hate to bring that physics back into it, but that is really what they think how systems work, or how we perceive systems, is within those invariances of those scales.
Yeah, right. It happens for over time. It's dynamic.
It's dynamic, but it's also framed within different time scales. So what factors stay within the period of duration of the story, and what disappear too.
True.
So-
But another point I made in my presentations is that what people have to realize is that, yes, this occurs dynamically over time, but a lot of the stuff is all happening at the same time.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah,
Right.
it's always happening all in the same time. And then the scaling allows us to appreciate a perceived stability as we step forward to the next step. So yes, I
Right.
like.
So no, and that was the aha moment for me at one point, where I likened it to watching the play or reading the script.
Right.
So that if you simply have the script, it's difficult to digest it in a short period of time. You have to sit there and watch the relationships unfold between the actors from one act to another, so you experience the story, and then it's not overwhelming, which
Right.
is just what Brian did with the presentation.
Yeah.
Unfolding it piece by piece. And is this the map that you did that presentation from?
The first map, yes.
This
Only
map.
part of it. I only did the economic market, retail market portion of it. I didn't do anything else yet.
Okay.
Okay?
So can I let that portion of it out of the box?
Yes, you can.
The thing that I
certainly.
saw here is that doing the text and the map and having them interact, you could bring the text in from some other research source,
Right.
and it keeps both sides of this screen in sync, honest, and the text side, if you've got a journalist in the audience and they need to put something in some, I don't know, media source, they have something they could walk away from the meeting with.
Right. Now, coming back to something that Robert was talking about before, this map here is basically showing the system in equilibrium, okay? This system stays basically the way it is because of all the stagnating loops we've got in this thing and all the reinforcing going towards the large corporate farmers. But I used this map to make another map, which was the community size and farming production means. And it shows evolution of the system, displaying a success to the successful archetype toward. So you can, like Robert was saying, if you come from different perspectives, you're going to see a different time scale. You're going to see a different outcome. You're going to see one is going to look like it's moving very slowly and nothing's changing. But if you go out to 1,000 or 1,000,000 years, you're going to see evolutionary change.
You want to go to that map, John?
Is it here?
Relevant, yeah, right. Okay, so it's community size and farm production. Right. Now, this one is not as developed as the other one was, but it goes through a process, and then the end one is rural community loss, which is actually it might be easy. Do you want to do the presentation instead?
Go back to the introduction. Go back,
Here.
Introduction. Scroll down. Which presentation?
Community size and means of farm production. Now, okay, so
Click.
right click. So this is blah, 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 blah,
Well,
blah.
I understand it's blah, 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 but that was one of the things about your presentation that I actually liked a lot, which I said I have left out of all of mine, which was to provide people with sort of setting the stage for what it is that they're going to look at. I just sort of beat them over the head with it immediately. And that's the problem with becoming too wedded to what it is that you're doing and not realizing that everybody else has no clue to start with.
It'll still be true with me. All right, so you can go to the next slide.
Okay. Here, right?
No,
No.
go back to the presentation.
Oh, okay. The presentation is a light box, so you have to use your direction
No,
keys.
no, this is not in a light box. It's use the arrow key on the right.
Okay, hit the arrow key.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't put them in a light box.
Oh, you did. Okay. All right. So again, farming communities, rural communities, work sustainable farmland. Sustainable farmland creates sustainable farm production, and that supports rural communities. So you have a positive loop. But what I also did here is, you see small and medium farmland in the narrative box?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay, click that. I tied it back into the relevant project map.
So
Okay,
so wait a minute. So you're doing a light box from inside of the presentation.
right. Tying it
Okay.
back to the relevant factor to the economic presentation I did. So this is on the small time scale, and the other one is on the large time scale, trying to show how they connect to each other.
I'm pleased to see that they fixed that, because at one point in time you couldn't do that.
I know, I thought that was really nice. Now you close it by that X at the top right-hand corner, right there. See? And now you can go on to the next one.
Over to the right, way on the right.
Right,
Down, right there, yeah.
yeah. Okay, and so you add in a local market, which supports the sustainable farming production because it's able to sell stuff, which supports the rural communities.
Uh-huh.
And again, I've got it tied into the other ones for production and profit motivation.
So you can also go backwards in the presentation. It's just the
Oh, yeah.
arrow on the left is real hard to see because it's in the white.
Yeah, but you can do it. Or you can use your direction keys on your keyboard.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
This brings up one of my theories of the case, and that is, when we started off early on, people farmed for themselves or went to a very close local market. But later on, people are farming to sell to outside markets from other states, from other countries even, type of thing. This changes the nature of how farmers need to market. And going back to what John was showing before in his map, there's been a commodification of rural products. The farmer has got to sell as a commodity, but the people who add value get to raise the price. I mean, Coca-Cola is basically just brown sugar water, all right? So, but this makes up the market for the local farmer. What he has to do, he either has to sell locally to people close by, or he has to sell on an open market. But if he sells in an open market, he's going to have far more competition. And he's also going to have competition from far bigger producers.
My intuition on this is that, you know, I showed Baca County in the far southeastern corner of Colorado being, I forget whether it's distressed or at risk, but it's tough.
Right.
So by the time you roll prices and product and profit up several layers of society, then you get to Denver County, where, yeah, there are people homeless, but there are also people living in $5 million mansions.
Right.
And there aren't any of those in Baca County.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to call that. That would be a very useful thing for me to be able to show in my model.
One of the things, terms I've used from other people are food deserts and food gluts. Places where there's no food, even though you're surrounded by prosperity, your zip code, like you mentioned before, John, is a food desert. Well, right next door, the next zip code is a food glut where people are becoming obese and, you know, have diabetes and other things because they're not eating the right kind of food.
Okay.
So
Well, one thing I think of is how you're dressing the product. The product's pretty bare when you pull it out of the ground at the farm,
Right.
and then as it goes transitions to Denver, and then goes to Whole Foods, it's dressed in a completely different way.
Yeah, right. Why don't you go to the next slide?
So,
See?
okay, so this is the cluster
Right,
of loops.
right.
Now, do you remember how you put this together?
As far as making clusters,
Well, back up a couple of slides. Way over on the arrow is there in the middle on the left.
right
It's
there.
just in the white. No, in the, keep going left, right there.
There you are.
See-
That's it.
yeah, right, you were right, but there's an arrow there.
Oh, wow.
Go
Pretty
back
simple.
again, farther. Okay, so go back one more. Okay, you centered this loop.
Right,
Okay, now go forward one.
okay. So what I do,
So you now centered the group.
right.
All right. Do you remember how you did that?
What I do is I create the first slide with just the R1 farming communities. Then I hit the plus sign within the presentation, so it adds it, and it will make a copy of that same thing, not with the writing I have, but with the underlying thing. I then use the search thing to find R2,
Okay.
would
Okay.
add to it, and then I put on the new
Okay. Because when you use the search thing and select from the drop down, it will add that to the focus.
right, yes.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead and go forward a couple, John. Yeah, right here. Okay, that's where we were. So this is sort of a summary of the first three loops.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Okay. With sort of, okay, this is a summary of the first three loops and sort of an implication or, a conclusion in your last sentence. Such farms often depend on more expensive niche markets. Okay.
Right,
And then you continue.
right. You can go to the next loop, John. Well, then we come over to the other side of the fence, and this is the urban market, mass production market, which it goes to sell to urban centers, which can do it efficiently because of commodification of the products. You can go on now. I've got them connected outside large corporate farm systems is another presentation which I'm still working on. And I always, if I take people outside of the presentation, I let them know this. In this case, it replaces all this completely. It doesn't go to a new window, which I don't quite understand why, but that's okay.
Yeah, you have to be very careful if you start opening presentations in light boxes in presentations.
Yeah, right.
It
It may not even
smaller and
work
smaller.
anymore. It may not. It may be going to the wrong place. I had to get rid of one. I had to start over on that.
Okay.
All right. So next slide. All right. So factory farming creates mass production, which is sold to urban centers, which supports mass production, which supports factory farming. So you have a beneficial. Particularly interesting. You can go to the next one. So this is the competition that these two systems of farming are having with each other. Okay.
Okay.
So the local farmer has to compete against the mass market, the factory farming mass production system. And I put it as this is David and Goliath without without a slingshot.
Okay.
We'll go to the next one. Okay. This is where I use the loop that's not a loop, okay? And I specifically say it inside the narrative. This is not a loop, but it's still going to have impact upon the system, all right? And the idea is that urban centers arise because population is put within geographically restrained places. People can't build out, so they build up. So more intensity. So that's what creates urbanization.
Well, you didn't label it as a loop.
I didn't.
Okay.
No, I didn't. No,
Okay.
exactly. I just want to make sure if people see a circle, they think, oh, that must be a loop, but it's not.
Okay.
I specifically say that in my narrative. So go to the next one. So what happens is that there is a loss of sustainable farmland from a number of different sources. One, because urban centers are replacing farmland with housing. That went to a great extent in California. There was a tremendous amount of farmland that was lost because people were making so much money. And then we had the housing bust. And then two, you also lose sustainable farmland because factory farms take it over. And factory farms need more land in order to do what they do. And they're constantly needing more land because they're ruining it through pesticides and fertilizer overuse. So go to the next one. And what this does is that it has a diminishing effect upon both the farming communities and the local farming markets. And the last one's going to be, this results because of pressure from B3, R4, and R5 in rural community loss. Not only in direct loss through population, but also in the disintegration of community cohesion within rural populations. And the next one I tied into the other. Oh, here, okay. So, questions for the past. Was the Green Revolution based upon the changes in American farm production that people then imported to other countries? And so I've got 3 videos here, one on the Green Revolution, why they thought it was so great, and then 2 others from this one woman who I think is pretty good, Green Revolution and the harm it does in the mythology. Well, the next 3 slides are all the videos, which you don't have to see right now. Just skip through them. No,
Oh, you actually embedded the videos.
Embedded videos, yeah. Now, I also got it in the previous slide. I've got it so you can click on and get an outside video.
Oh, okay.
Go up.
Okay. Hold on a second.
Okay. Yeah, see here? If you click those,
I'm back.
if you click any of those down at the bottom, those will open up a new window.
We have a dog that likes Halloween.
Great marketing video for your business. With you can create commercialized videos in minutes.
Okay.
Over 12 million quality videos from real estate and fashion
Go back.
and internet trends. Find exactly.
Okay, so just go through and skip the next 3 slides. Sometimes these have a hard time coming in for some reason or other. But one more. Okay, so questions for the past, and this is questions for the future. And the basic one is Jeffrey West of the Santa Fe Institute for Complexity has a book out called Scale and talks about the fact that cities scale superlinearly. That certain things, because of urbanization, certain things grow so that you don't need as many gas stations when your community gets bigger. You have greater improvement in the number of patents created. You have greater wages. You have a lot of the things that start growing faster than other things do. But here's my question. If our food systems are more and more outside the urban centers and are becoming sublinear or at best linear, what does that do? You've got two systems that are moving out of sync with each other, it seems to me. Not only is it creating environmental problems and destroying rural communities, the whole system is sort of like being stretched out or pulled apart. And I think that's going to be a big problem.
Did you watch any of the videos I sent out on vertical farming?
Not yet. I've still got to do that.
That
It's true, but the
directly
vertical
relates.
farming doesn't solve the carbon sequestration problem.
Why?
Because
The
you're not
plants-
putting-
The
You're not-
plants
okay.
eat.
but are you putting stuff back into the soil? Are you taking carbon out of the air, like or are you just being neutral?
The plants eat carbon dioxide regardless of where they are.
But that's not enough as far as that's not regenerative, or is it? I don't think vertical is regenerative. I think it's sustainable, but I don't think it's regenerative. I could be wrong. That's the thing
I'm going to guess that you get polarization because sublinear people just can't, and superlinear people in those contexts can't really empathize with what's happening with the other guy.
Well, true. If they don't do that, they're going to, it's like that cartoon with people in a boat and one side of the boat is sinking and the other guy's on the other side. Say, I'm glad it's not our side of the boat.
I haven't seen that one. That's cute. It's not my side of the boat.
Concerning income inequality, I saw something the other day about Fairfield County, Connecticut, which is where the Wall Street guys go home to at the end of the day. It is the most income unequal place in the country. It's the kind of place where if there is a McDonald's in Fairfield County, which is where Sandy Hook Elementary was, by the way, if there is a McDonald's there, the people that work in that McDonald's can't afford to live there.
Oh, that's true of a lot of places.
But that's the kind of thing about income accruing to urban that I'm talking about.
Right. Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely. That's what's happening. People are moving out of the rural communities, going there, because even though they're working at McDonald's and can't afford to live in that city, they still have a better employment opportunity than they do back in the farm.
Right.
But that's not going to be, that's not sustainable. It's not sustainable economically. It's not sustainable environmentally. It's not sustainable, in any ways. That's what I'm trying to communicate. But it's such a big system. I mean, like Gene was saying, our original introduction map is so huge. I didn't even try to take the whole map in one. It's not an elephant. It's a herd of elephants.
Okay. Though it was instrumental in you getting to where you are.
Yes, it was. It was. You have to start there.
And the rest of us.
Right, exactly. And that wouldn't have been possible if you guys hadn't first thrown it together, okay? I mean, I don't know how many people from the original map creation, I know I saw the videos, you guys came together and started putting things together. That was essential. And from my point of view, I could not go back and say, okay, John did this part and Robert did that part and Steve did that. It all gets into the mix, okay? So it kind of emerges out for what it is. And then from that, I can take it and start saying, okay, this is what I see. Kind of like.
And I was very pleased because I don't think along the way we ran into anyone being overly concerned about their part.
Yeah, that's important.
Right? I mean, it was people weren't overly possessive about pieces. It was a willingness to consider various perspectives.
I think the acumen system practice courses, I think you've done a couple of those, Gene.
Yeah.
I've done 3 or 4. I think it's designed to do that. I think it's designed in such a way that people don't have a way to kind of like throw everything into the pot and mix it up and then bring it back out again. I think it's purposely designed that way.
Yeah, whenever that comes, if I remember when it's coming around, I try to post about it. Because
Yeah, I do too. I didn't do it the last one because I was doing this. But I've done 3.
well, I don't want to do the course again. I just want to invite people to go take it.
Yeah, no. I like trade, working with different people.
Okay. All right.
All right, so there's one more page on this. One more slide. What do you want to do? Oh, there are 3 more slides. Okay, you can put, this is, I really enjoy him. I like his work. You can skip him for now. Skip. Skip. Sometimes it just load. It won't load. I don't know why.
What's it trying to load?
It's trying to load a video, but sometimes it just hangs up. Okay, and so I tie all of these 4 presentations together. I'm still working on large corporate farm systems, and I'm still working on community knowledge and system awareness. Is now called changing mental models. But I'm still working on that one too. But actually, this probably doesn't go anywhere anymore. So
Okay.
I try to tie them all together to show how they're related to each other.
What was the one about mental models then? Is that, or is it, are they
Changing
interrelated?
models. That goes back what Gene was talking about a little while ago, the relationship between public awareness, social systems, social values, desire for food, that type of thing.
And then your mental model would integrate them all together into an understanding?
It's where all the mental models that exist in the system come from.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got a mental model right now which says we have to be stuck with this system we have, and we're looking how to transform that mental model. So we need to work at a paradigm level, which is one of the things Klaus keeps on coming up with. So I'm just trying to see how that pathway works.
Okay, yeah.
But that's a separate presentation.
Which you're building off of which model?
I'm building it off again, the relevant factors map.
Okay.
But I reconfigured it.
At the end of the presentation, does it point to the map itself?
No, because I don't think that my map is ready for that level of inspection.
Oh, okay.
I make sure people stick at the presentation level.
Okay.
I reference the map, but I never give anything to it. Now you can get to it, I think, because I figured out how to get to people's maps before, but most people won't bother.
On that mental model, I'm working with a fella that they just did some research on organic chemistry students where they realized that they could not make the transition, or they were looking at how their mental models change from one understanding of the chemical reaction to the other, but they needed to put an intermediate model in the middle so that they could capture the transition easier.
Yes, I can see that. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, so then, so if one was trying to create an awareness of a system and then project it or have a project to move it forward to another transformational paradigm awareness, one might look for an intermediate platform that that would be intuitively more dynamic. I mean, in the organic chemistry model it doesn't even exist, but or it only exists in a very dynamic way. And so that the reframing of the mental model as a dynamic process with even a platform to skip across.
Okay. I'm not at the intermediate stage yet. I'm still at the very basic.
So I'm just throwing that out as a mental one
Yeah.
probably is doing that.
Right. But I can see that.
Yeah, if you look at the URL here that says stw.kumu.io, up here, the URL in the URL line, no, right there, says stw.kumu.io.
Right.
If you type in kumu.io/stw, it will show you all of STW's models and presentations.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I found everybody's.
Uh,
There.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, exactly. Me too. I mean, I'm forking your stuff all the time.
You aren't stealing a lot of presentations, though, are you?
No, not presentations.
No, because they're all gone. I put together a presentation. I use it, and after I use it, I get rid of the presentation. And the reason being is Ryan had to go through and delete about 15 presentations for which the models no longer exist.
Oh.
Yeah, if you delete the model from the presentation was created from, there's no way to get back to edit it.
Yeah, no, I came up with the same problem myself.
Yeah, if you have a bunch, that Ryan can get rid of them.
Okay. I think I only have one.
Okay. Well, I think this has been a marvelous session. Are there anything else that people would
No, I'm good.
like to talk about today?
No,
Do we want to meet next week, or do we want to wait till after Christmas, or?
no.
Huh?
Whatever you guys say.
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, I found this a very meaningful session. I'm not sure what we would do in the next session.
When's Klaus back?
He said 2 weeks, and he was leaving
Okay.
right after the last
We
meeting.
can do it after Christmas.
After Christmas?
Yeah.
All right, I'll send out a note.
Okay.
When is?
And I was just going to say, I put that one article, looked like Brian had already seen it, about in area and about the systems and the project. But I thought that, big picture wise, I thought that was very, very good, even though he probably, like you said, he probably is not a systems thinker in that way. But I thought it brought out the idea of creating a system. You have and you can only operate in one awareness at a time. The transformational kind of the metaphor he uses as a duck and as a rabbit. The duck being the system itself, and once you have that awareness, then you make a project to move forward from that point of stability. And so that article that I put on chat.
Yeah, I got it. I'll read it.
It may be I mean, it was very effective for talking to my brother, because he's got a problem. He's a lawyer and a CPA, so it's very hard to talk to try to explain anything to him. So this article was helpful.
I just threw in an article that kind of was the counterpart to this one that somebody gave me. Benjamin Taylor gave it to me from a Twitter discussion.
Yeah, Ben's starting a podcast series.
Oh, is he?
And he's looking for people to participate. Are you interested?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'll think about it.
Okay.
You would be a good subject.
What?
You would be a good subject.
Oh, I'm scheduled for sometime in February.
Okay. All right.
I figured between now and Christmas was not really a good time to do a podcast.
No.
And he's traveling in January, so.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, well, I'll put out a note saying that our next meeting will be January 7th, which is the first Tuesday in January.
2020.
Yep. Okay.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
Okay.
Merry Christmas, all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.